I take my hat off to anybody within the education profession, the way that it's, for me, I feel it's moved away from the children and is a lot about policy and about all the different rules, the ever-changing people who are in charge in government. So we jump through one hoop to meet what that minister thinks, and then they move. And so I've definitely noticed a shift from focusing on the children and necessarily a thematic approach to it being about, well, we've got to do this. You know, my PGCE was when the literacy and numeracy strategy had come out with David Blunkett.
Hello, my name's Jenna. I'm an online primary tutor, and today I'm talking to Vicky from Yes You Can Tutoring about how to quit teaching to become a supply teacher and a tutor. If you are a tutor or a supply teacher watching this video, please let me know down below in the comments. Thank you very much for joining me today, Vicky. It's lovely to speak to you.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to sharing my story.
Lovely. Well, you actually were recommended to me by a lovely friend, and I'm really glad she recommended you to me. That was lovely, Emily. So that's fantastic. So let's get started then. What route did you take into teaching?
So my journey, as you might be sure, as Emily and other people who know me will say, is never straightforward. I always like a bit of an adventure on the way. So I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. Always knew from very young, but found when I got to A-level and started applying to universities that the universities didn't want me because I was doing a drama A-level. And at the time, they didn't want to know about a drama A-level. They wanted all the English, the maths, the science. So I was rejected from every single university I applied to and kind of had a bit of a, what am I going to do? How am I going to get to where I want to get? So I went and did a HND, a Higher National Diploma in Community Performance and Theatre and Education. So I still got to do my passion for my drama, but I also got to work with young people and vulnerable groups. I went and did quite a bit of work with people at Nottingham Prison, but also throughout schools throughout Nottinghamshire, which was amazing. And then when I finished that, I contacted Bretton Hall University. Well, it was a college then. So Bretton Hall up in Yorkshire, because they were doing an arts ed degree. And I asked if there was any chance I could be accepted onto that degree because I'd done my A-levels and I'd passed. I'd done my HND and I'd passed with flying colours. And they took me onto the final year of the degree, which was amazing. Wow. So I came back with a BA honours in arts and education, and then I stayed at Bretton and did a postgraduate, a PGCE. So I got to teaching. I just did it in lots of little ways, but I got there and I got to the place I wanted to be. So it was a little bit different, but I've got to be honest, I'm really glad it was different. I learned far more. I got to meet more people, had way more experiences that I never thought I'd be working with inmates in a prison. Never thought I'd be working with adults and children and many different people as I did. Whereas I think if I'd gone straight into my teaching degree, I wouldn't have had all those experiences. So I got there, I just went on a different journey.
Wow, that's fascinating that you went on to do so many different things, because I imagine, like you say, you learn a lot more than you would have done if you'd just done the normal route. Yes. What was it like working in the prison?
At first, I was quite frightened because it was something that was completely alien to me. And I can remember on our first visit when we went in, being given very strict instructions on what you could and couldn't wear, what you could and couldn't say, and being quite nervous when we were taken through and we were searched, because that was completely alien to me. And then being taken into a room where they locked the door behind you. And again, I thought, oh my goodness, but actually it was so inspiring. We did quite a lot at that time. There was one of the sessions that we were in was a lot to do with HIV and AIDS and acceptance and understanding. So we did a big project on that, and just hearing the stories and then getting to put a piece of drama and music and poetry and all that together to share with other inmates. And we were able to get their families to come and see as well, and to see what they got out, what the inmates got out of it. And equally what we got out of it. It was a real collaborative approach. And it got that when we were going for rehearsals and doing things, the nerves went. I felt very comfortable, very confident, and very safe, very safe. Yeah, it was amazing experience.
And what's the age range?
So we worked with people from 18 all the way up to people that were in their 60s.
Oh.
Yeah, and Nottingham Prison's a top security, so it's a no nonsense whatsoever. You didn't ask or talk about why anybody was in there, but you knew that they were in there for quite serious offences. But like I said, I felt perfectly safe the whole time. I really enjoyed working with them.
And then I suppose, did the PGCE seem really easy then in comparison to your experiences in terms of managing children?
Yes, I suppose it did. I wasn't fazed by disruption. I wasn't fazed by angry parents. Because in my head I kept thinking, oh, I'm fine. I've been I'm okay. I know how to communicate to all different people of all different ages. I think the hardest part I found with my PGCE was the amount of paperwork that went with it. Whereas when we'd be planning our sessions to go into work at the prison, you'd still plan a lot, but a lot of it would happen. If something had happened in the prison that week, we might bring it into what we were doing. So it was a lot of thinking on your feet, which you do in teaching. But I found that it was that side of the PGCE I found hard, but actually being with the children and working with the other adults and working with parents and carers, it was actually fine. I really enjoyed it, and I wasn't daunted. And I was often, as it turned out, working with quite challenging children, but I wasn't fazed by it at all.
Really good, because that is one thing I found, and other people have said, that you don't really get a lot of support with behaviour management when you first go into teaching. I certainly didn't, and other people have said, but you kind of had that already, really, and in some cases to the most extreme extent. So to already have that knowledge, because you know, some new teachers going in, they're taught all the theory side, and then it's like, oh, here you go, 30 children.
Yes.
And you're like, oh. And I was certainly taught about the lesson and teaching the lesson and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't think, oh, little Jimmy has had a terrible night at home, whatever's gone on in that child's life, he's not going to want to come in and do half an hour phonics straight away or an hour English straight away. So there's so much beyond that you need to consider. So what did you specialise in then, primary?
So I was primary and English. So it was English with drama in there. So that was my specialism on my PGCE.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So I still kept my drama there. I wasn't letting it go.
Yeah. Because drama is the one thing. I remember we had a brilliant drama teacher in my secondary school, but it was always the one thing that was to go if you know, funding related and everything, which was really sad, because so many children who don't enjoy English maths, and they really come to light in a production, and you think, oh my goodness, that person actually talks, because they're communicating in that play or whatever it may be. Very interesting. So you taught for 25 years in a variety of areas.
Makes me feel really old when I hear that.
Oh dear.
For a very long time, yes.
How have you seen education change, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I think there's, I take my hat off to anybody within the education profession. The way that it's, for me, I feel it's moved away from the children and is a lot about policy and about all the different rules, the ever-changing people who are in charge in government. So we jump through one hoop to meet what that minister thinks, and then they move. And so I've definitely noticed a shift from focusing on the children and necessarily a thematic approach to it being about, well, we've got to do this. You know, my PGCE was when the literacy and numeracy strategy had come out with David Blunkett, and that's all we were drilled in, that we had to do an hour of this and it had to be broken up into sections. But then also on placement, doing all about theory, and we'd theory themes, and we, you know, doing about, I can remember doing it about important people, and we did about the police force, but we did about the Queen, and we did all about, and I felt a lot of that's gone away, and it's things that children are being told they need to know rather than things that might necessarily be relevant for what they need to know. That's what I've really noticed, is the shift from the children to what's being almost inflicted on the staff and being inflicted on the children, feel as if it's all kind of going down on them.
That's an interesting approach. So when you would teach themes, would you kind of go in the direction of what the children were interested in?
Yeah, we'd kind of think about what was appropriate in regards of what they needed to know. So in one of the schools that I worked in, it was a very small village, and the kind of the feeling within the village is people were losing touch with who was important and who was special. So we did a whole part, a theme about the important people who were within our village, from the local people who were in the post office. We went to visit them, people in the cafe. We talked about like what a community was, and from that we got maths and English. We did history. We did all sorts of things. So it kind of, I found with the thematic, it would be what the children might be interested in, also linked in with what was important at the time within of where we were and what the setting was. So yeah, it varied greatly.
That's interesting, because a comment actually a lot of home ed parents say to me is that like a lot of the themes are repeated on a yearly basis now, and they have no relevance to the children currently. And so that is quite a common theme, and it's nice that at that point it was relevant to the area that you were living in. And because I noticed over the years that my background was as a nursery teacher mainly, like children over the years didn't know like what a post office was, didn't know about a supermarket, had never been to a supermarket, and so you'd plan like not extravagant things, but like you know, more out there topics, and then you realize, oh, they don't actually know what that shop is. They don't know anything about that, so there's no point teaching about another country or another something else when they don't know what's in their home environment. So it's interesting that we've stepped away from that, really. So what led to you then giving up teaching, quitting teaching, and how did you feel when you made that decision?
It was so difficult. I absolutely love what I do. I love working with the children. I love igniting those light bulbs. I love going on the journey with the children and watching them grow. But the impact it was having on myself and my mental health was just horrific. So as a result, in 2018, I went off school for the first time ever with work-related stress and anxiety. And it is the scariest, darkest place I have ever been in. And thankfully, you know, the joy of therapy has just been phenomenal. My family were amazing. My husband was, oh bless him, he was a star. Working with through all of that, I did go back to school after I'd had time off, and when I got back, I just thought, no, I don't want to do this anymore. So it was as a result of going off with work-related stress and anxiety. I just thought, no, I need to leave now. I can still do. At the time when I left, I wasn't even sure if I ever wanted to teach again or walk in a classroom. Yes, it was scary. It was dark, but now I look back, I think, why didn't I do it sooner?
I know. I think I can relate to, well, personally for me, when you're at one point in teaching, you know, that's all, once you were a teacher, that was it then.
Yeah.
Nothing else that you do. So when you start to have thoughts, for me personally, I was like, well, I don't know what else I'll do. Like, this is all I've ever known. And like you say, it can be really scary to like step away from that path you've known your whole life to something else. So from coming back to school after your time off,
Yeah.
and to quitting. What time frame was that?
I came back into school in the June of 2018 on a phased return, and the first week back in September, we were sat in a staff meeting on the Wednesday, and I thought no, and that was it. I never went back, and I'd resigned by the December, and I'd started, and then in January 2019 my new life began.
And how did the school react to you finishing?
They were really shocked. I'm a very sociable, happy, bubbly person. So to suddenly see that person that's normally there to suddenly go, no, I'm not doing this anymore. The school were really shocked. I was really lucky. The head at the time was amazing, absolutely amazing. He was so supportive. He completely and utterly got it and understood that to me, my family is so important. I was missing out on so much. And he got it too. He'd got a young family and he understood. So my head was so supportive. There was no pressure put on whatsoever. I wasn't made to feel guilty by him. My colleagues were stunned, really stunned at my choice, because they didn't see it coming. But again, there were those that were really supportive and those that didn't know what to say. So didn't really say anything, which again I got, because it was completely what they hadn't expected. But yeah, my head was fantastic, and my union were really supportive as well, of helping me to facilitate, along with the head, that I could leave without too many of the problems, because that's the other thing with teaching. You leave, you don't want to leave with almost like a black mark against your name.
And that is very common in teaching. You know, if you don't get on with the head or leadership, you have to be quite strategic in a way. In some schools, unfortunately, there are many teachers who are so overwhelmed with the job, and they know they can't just go, because if they go, some heads are quite influential in certain areas, and it can, if you want to go to another school, it can can damage your career.
I was really concerned because of things I'd heard of, well, you won't be able to work in Nottinghamshire again, where I live and my family are. I was thinking, well, where am I going to work? I've worked really hard. At the time, I thought I was useless at my job as well. But again, working through therapy, I realised I'm good at what I do. I know now I'm good at what I do. But I was feeling a little bit lost, thinking I never want to step in the classroom again. But my head was absolutely amazing. We're still in touch now. We'll drop little messages to each other.
Oh, wow, that's so brilliant.
He is absolutely wonderful. He's no longer the head at the school I was at. He's still within the family of schools involved there. And it's always lovely if I do get to see him. We have a great big hug and a bit of a cat. He was amazing. He made sure that I could still, when I was in the place to come back into teaching, I'd always got him on my shoulder doing the, yes, you can do it. So yeah, he was amazing. He was so good, my head.
And when you look back at that period before you went off, were there signs now that you look back that things weren't right?
Yes.
And if you're comfortable, do you mind sharing those signs?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So I realised that my heart racing isn't normal. I thought it was just part and parcel of every day. I thought my heart racing and feeling very fuzzy in my head was perfectly normal. That was okay. Now I know that isn't. Working until 2 a.m. was normal. That was acceptable. That's what I needed to do. Not going out and joining with things with my family because I've got to do schoolwork, and that sense of guilt, overwhelming sense of guilt for who am I pleasing, feeling like a robot, getting up and just doing. And I feel I kind of lost sense with that. I would say that autumn, just knowing things weren't right, I really wish I'd listened to it before. I'd kept on, but I kept questioning, thinking, I don't think I feel right. I don't think this is okay. My heart's racing. I feel shocking. I'm not sleeping. I'm not really eating. Oh, that's just because I'm not organising my time very well. But thinking I can't possibly fit any more in. I mean, at the time when I went off on my contract, it said 16 hours a week. I mean, we never do that in teaching, do we? We always do. But I can remember I'd started to keep a tally, which again was a sign of why was I doing that? I obviously knew something wasn't okay. And I kind of worked out an average, and I was working about 72 hours a week. But actually, I wasn't full time anyway. I was part time and do. It's now I look back and think, what? Why did I accept that? But then I thought that's what I needed to do.
It was the norm though. Like, I remember that being the norm. And I can relate to the other staff being surprised that you were going, because I remember teachers that were rated as outstanding, that, you know, outstanding according to Ofsted, but also outstanding in just how they were. And then when they started to go, we were like, what?
Yeah.
What's happening? And then when you talk to them, because we never talked to each other, we were that busy. And they'd say, oh yeah, similar to you, certain things were happening, the heart was racing and all this kind of stuff. And then you're like, oh, so that's not normal then. And it's funny because you just keep going for the good of the children, for the good of the school. So for a new teacher starting out, what advice would you give to a new teacher so they don't get to that point where you got so overwhelmed?
I think it's when I first think of that, the alarm bell goes in my head with don't enter, do not come in, do not start, is what comes up. I remember talking to my godson, was thinking about doing going into education, being a teacher. I was like, no, seriously, do not. Go and have some time doing something else and then consider going into it. I think but now I'm in a better place. It is so rewarding, but you've got to have really clear boundaries.
Yeah.
I know I didn't have any. My boundaries were the boundaries I was given by the education system. They weren't mine. I didn't own it. So if you're coming into teaching, you need to go in knowing it's going to be hard. Your hours, forget what it says about how many hours a week you're going to work, kind of add several more hours onto that, but have really clear boundaries. Have set time out where you're going to do your work, but then equally put that laptop away. Leave it in the car, leave it in the cupboard in school, and make sure you have you're really clear on doing things for you as well. And things for you, not just, oh, I'm going to make sure I've got all my marking up to date. No, things for you, as in go out and have a cup of tea, go and eat cake, go out for a walk, do something that is for you. I think also have a plan. Always have a plan of what you're going to do next. Because I remember getting to my first school and thinking I'd be there forever.
That was the way that you went into schools forever, and that terrified me as a new teacher. I'm thinking, oh, you've never left, and that was one red flag for me initially, because everyone just accepted, oh, once you're here, oh, the year just goes on, and you live holiday to holiday.
Yeah.
Like,
no.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Thank you very much.
No, I think it's always have your clear boundaries. If you're going in and you know what you're going to do. If you're not sure of something, ask about it. And I think if you start with your clear boundaries, I know that I felt very guilty with my boundaries when I'd got them, thinking, oh, people are going to think I don't care and I don't want to know and I'm being awkward. And I got into saying, I'm not being awkward. It's just I'm doing this now, and then I'm not doing the next bit. And I got into saying, well, if I'm doing this, what am I not doing? Again, I'd got the relationship with the head at the time, the wonderful head, to say, now, if I'm doing that, what am I not doing for you? Because I haven't got capacity to fit it all in. And I got into using the word I haven't got. Not I can't do it, because it's not that I can't, I'm more than capable. And I think as a new teacher, making sure it's not that you can't, you are amazing. keep on remembering you are amazing. Don't let anybody tell you you're not, but just make sure you've got those boundaries and you've got a plan of what you're going to do. Be it that you're going to stay in a school for a couple of years, be it that you're going to move on, be it you want to work for a few years and then go out and do something else. I know when I went in, it was, well, this is where I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do so many years here, and then I'm going to apply to be a deputy head, and then I'm going to be a head by so long. And I'd almost got this plan in my head without thinking of the bigger picture. And I think then it was all trapping and in coaching. So yeah, have clear boundaries, be prepared to say no, and it's okay to say no. Have things prepared that are lovely for you, and have a plan of where you're going to move on.
So then moving on from teaching, you didn't quite go away from teaching, you went to supply teaching.
Yeah.
Similar route to me, that's what I did. Why did you want to try supply teaching? Did you have any preconceived ideas about it?
Well, when it came to, like we said, when you go into teaching, then your qualifications, and then it was a case of, well, what am I going to do now then? And when you start going online looking at what can I do with my qualifications, it always comes up with, oh, you can be a teacher. I kept thinking, I'm trying to escape teaching, what can I do? And again, it was my head that said, and I've worked with some wonderful supply teachers in my years in school, so I'm just going to have a go and see what it's like. So I signed up with a few agencies, and again, that was alien to me, completely alien, trusting that person, and I did have a bit of worry of, well, if I don't get any work, how am I going to get some money? What am I going to do? And what about my pension? I'd got my pension going on in my head, worrying about that.
That's a big question in teaching. What about your pension?
And when you're doing supply, you can no longer pay into your teaching pension. You have to pay into a different pension. I was getting all, but I just kind of thought, well, do you know what? If I carry on with what I am doing and I go back into a contracted job, I'm just going to be in a heap, and I'm not going to be of any use. So I'm going to go into supply. And I remember going into my first school. I didn't sleep the night before. I didn't eat any breakfast. Thought, oh, what am I doing this for? And I loved it. I had the best day because I had fun with the children. The work was there. I knew what I was doing, and I was very much of, I'm going to give my absolute best that I can while I'm here. And then when I got home that night, I got a phone call from my agent, and again, that all seemed a bit alien. I've got an agent, and my agent rang me to say that the school I'd been at had rang him to thank me.
Oh, that's so nice.
I can do it. I can do it. And then that school, I went back and did quite a few more weeks for them. And just to have that boosted that confidence. So I'd got a preconceived idea. I'd end up with loads of marking to do, and I'd have no time to go to the toilet. And what was I going to do if the children were disruptive, and are they going to have respect for me? And I think I went in and thought, I'm just going to be very clear with my expectations. I'm not going to put up with any nonsense. I'm going to make sure I know what the behaviour policy is, and I'm going to be giving praise all the time for anybody, even if they're breathing beautifully. I'm going to win them round. So yeah, there were preconceived ideas. And yeah, to a point, I did have quite a few. When I think of a lot of the classes I worked at, I have had disruptive children, but again, because of my experiences pre-doing my degree, I wasn't fazed. You know, I was the one that was stepping in to break up fights when the staff were stood at the side, because I just was not fazed in the slightest at other schools I've been at. So yeah, it's been different but amazing.
That's really good. You are similar to me. Supply teaching gave me my love of teaching back. And I do think that before teachers go into a permanent job, they should try supply teaching, and just for them to see what they like and what they don't like. Because once you're in a school on a permanent contract, it's very, very difficult. And, you know, your mental health can truly suffer if it's not the right school for you. But it's interesting what you said. Now, how has being a supply teacher compared to a permanent teacher compared for you?
So for me, it greatly reduced my stress.
Oh, brilliant.
Greatly reduced my stress. When I go in, I know that I'm there, but I'm not there forever. and knowing that is huge.
That's
I know I
that
haven't got to put up with all the paperwork that's got to be done. I haven't got to do that. I haven't got to attend all the staff meetings. I haven't got to make sure that my planning's on time and I've dotted that I don't have to do that. I'm in there to focus on the children and to engage them and get them moving in their journey of learning. And I found that huge. So greatly reduced my stress. I found being able to pass things on. I'd often find when I was in a permanent contract, somebody would tell me something about one of the children within my class, and then I'd have to fill in one form, log something else online, speak with the parent, and the list would go on of all the things I'd have to do. Now, if anything occurs, it's not a problem. I make a note for it, and then I pass it on to the class teacher. I don't have to think of anything else. So I found that different. The other thing that's I can remember it really struck me, and it still does now. You hear the words "thank you."
Yes, that's true. You hear it more as a supply teacher than you do as a teacher.
Because there's that expectation when you are a permanent teacher that you will just do everything over and above the call and duty all the time, from the moment you walk in the door until you go home, and then you carry on at home. Whereas I found with supply, you hear those words "thank you." And I can remember at first, it really took me by surprise. And I can remember asking people, why are you thanking me? Like, but you don't realise what you've done today. All those things you've stepped in, and that being appreciated. I wasn't used to that. I never heard it. No doubt my colleagues would have said thank you to me, and I would have, I would have been told thanks. And, I had a wonderful head who was very much into making sure staff knew they were appreciated, and he'd write a letter to you at the end of the year to say thank you, which was really lovely. With the CD of music, which was always great, he'd put a playlist together, and so you'd have this playlist of all songs and a little message. That was such a lovely thing to do. It must have taken hours, bless him, but it was lovely. But actually hearing those two words, "thank you," that's something I've really noticed a difference in. Yeah.
So what advice would you give? There are many people going on supply. Yeah. What advice would you give a new supply teacher starting out? Because for me in teaching, there was always a negative link to supply teaching.
Yeah.
And it was considered not a great thing to do. But like you had a really positive experience. I had a positive experience. But you don't see that much when you research supply teaching. No. So what would you say to a new supply teacher?
I think one thing I'd definitely say is be open to age groups. I do know a lot of supply teachers who will state, "I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do that." If you go in with the knots, you're not going to get the experience. So interesting, my PGCE was specialising in early years. I think I taught early years for the first time again about 3 weeks ago. I've predominantly been year 5 and 6, which I remember starting out in teaching used to scare me. The thought of being in year 6 used to make me think, oh my gosh. But now, for so many years I've done that. So I be open and have a go at coming out of your comfort zone, because at the end of the day, you're only there for the day. If it doesn't go according to plan, it doesn't go according to plan, but be willing to have a go. The other thing I'd say is, if you are in a school and you're not happy, let your agent know. I know from my experience, there's been some schools I've gone into and I've thought, absolutely not, am I ever returning here again? Even if they book me, I'm not going there. So I've been really open and honest about that. I'd also, with your agent, be really clear on the distance you're willing to travel.
Yes, that's a massive one.
Because I've been told, well, it's only 20 minutes from your house. Yeah, that's 20 minutes when there's no traffic and all the traffic lights are on green. Otherwise, it's an hour and a half. So being very, very clear, and like I said, really be really clear with your boundaries. And I'd say making sure, if you're going to a school, make sure you find out what time they start, because that's one that I've often I get there early anyway. but I've often seen supply teachers arriving and the school day's already begun, because different schools have different start times.
And that's changing a lot more lately, especially end of day times.
Yes.
I've noticed that's changed dramatically over the years.
Yeah, the other thing that I did when I first started doing supplies, in my bag I always carried thank you notes.
Oh,
and I'd leave the class and the teacher a little thank you note. I'd put down the notes of where they were at and all the other bits on another piece of paper, but I'd always leave a card on the table for the class teacher when they came back in, so they got the experience of a positive, and I was telling them wonderful things and a thank you to the children, because I felt that built up the relationships. And when I went into quite a few schools, teachers would say, nobody's ever left me a note to say thank you before.
Oh, that's a lovely idea. That's really, really nice.
Yeah.
So then, moving forward, you still do your supply teaching, but how did tutoring come up?
That came from my wonderful head when I was not in a very good place. He mentioned how much he enjoyed tutoring, and he said to me, from what I see of you as a person, Vicky, how I see you work with the children, those children that find work really, really challenging, the way you work and work with them, I think you'd be really good at tutoring. So if you want to, I'd strongly suggest doing it. So I decided I'd go for it. I'd give it a go and see how it went. At first, I just put an advert on my local Facebook group for my local area. I thought I'd just see how it goes. And a friend recommended to her sister that, I know somebody who's tutoring, and it started from there. And now I am fully booked. I have no space for any other children. It's wonderful. The young lady I've worked with tonight, it's her birthday, and she still wanted me to attend, so we've eaten cake and we've worked really hard whilst listening to birthday tunes as well. So it's been a real journey. But yeah, I just thought I'd have a go. I really love working with children that don't find things easy, because at school I never found anything easy. I always had to work really hard, so I really get a lot out of helping those that learning is even harder for them. So to be able to go and just give them that one-to-one, because you don't often get that in a classroom.
Especially now.
Yeah, exactly. That 1 hour of just one-to-one where they can ask anything that they might be finding tricky, that they wouldn't want to ask in class and look silly. It was again down to that wonderful head, just giving me an idea, and I thought, you know what, I'll go for it. Let's see.
And is it face to face? Is it online, or is it a mixture of both?
I go to their house. From my own experience, I've seen from my own children, when it comes to working online, when I think of us in lockdown, the teacher might be chatting away to them, but they were doing umpteen other things. So I find being present in the moment, being in the room with them. So I go to their house. So I go to the house. I insist there's an adult in the house, because you've got to think about your own safety. And I'm there for that hour. And I also felt going to their home, I found the children more comfortable. They're in their space. They're not coming to something that's alien. And it also meant for me, my home is my home. When I come home and I walk through the door, I'm not bringing anything else with me. So it is good to go into their homes and work with them there.
And what advice would you give to tutors who are doing face-to-face tutoring?
If you're doing face-to-face tutoring, be really spot on with your timings. I know that I can be getting carried away, and before you know it, the hour's gone and you're still going. I found listening to the children, I'd always go for their first session. Before their first session, I'll go and do a pre-visit. I'll sit with the parent first of all, just to find out anything that they want to let me know or ask me, and then I'll have some time with the child on their own, because I felt it was really important with my own children. One of my own children, he needs to know what you look like, down to your feet. He needs to know what your shoes you've got on. So I found for the young people I work with, they get to see what I look like. They get to hear me. I'm not somebody who suddenly arrives on the door for day one and we're straight into it. And I will ask them, what do you think you're amazing at? We'll get out a plan of what they think they're fantastic at. and what would they like to work at. If I'm there, what would they like to work on, and they'll start to pick up on things. And then during the sessions, I'd say I did used to do all the planning when I got home for the next session, but that takes up time. So I've got now during my sessions while we're working and they might have said something, I do everything on PowerPoint for every student, and I can make a note, and then I can drop something in and we'll plan the next week so the child feels that they are in control of what they're learning. And I go on the journey, they're a bit more enthused rather than me coming in and saying, right, we're going to be doing long division today. If they've come up with long division and we've picked out what we might want to do, when it comes to it, they're excited about doing it because they've had ownership and input.
That's lovely. So how have you found managing the supply and the tutoring? So are you full-time supply? No.
With my supply, my husband and I sat and worked out what we were going to do, and with what he does for a living, what I do for a living, I aim to do about three days a week. Sometimes it might be 4, not very rarely I'll do 5 days a week. I'm exhausted when we get to that Friday night, but yeah, it tends to be between 3 to 4 days a week. My tutoring I do over 3 evenings. It can make the day quite long. It can be quite long if I've been in school on that day, but yeah, I'll do it over 3 evenings, and it'll be 2 students an evening that I'll do. So then I know I've got a bit of time off during the week, and I know I've got some evenings off where I'm not tutoring as well.
Gosh, you're working hard then. Keep going.
Yeah, absolutely loving it.
So you're also passionate about the arts.
Yes.
And you've introduced annual talent shows, art exhibitions for schools and the wider communities. Now, obviously, you've talked about your art background, but how has this developed in your working life?
So I did quite, when I think of the schools that I've worked at in the past, some of them, the staff were a bit nervous about the arts. They thought it was going to be we had to sing and dance and draw. So I kind of worked and collaborative with them, brought people in to work with them, did quite a few projects, accessed funding. I was quite fortunate with the school I worked at. One of the parents had set up their own business that was all linked with the arts. So I got her and the team on board. And so we applied for funding and we were able to host an art exhibition, and we got the local community involved. I did quite a lot of talking to people and finding out what other people did. I'd go, if there was anything that was online to do with the arts, I'd be messaging to find out, to see what else we could bring out. And with the talent shows, that came all the way back from when I was at college and going to university during the summer holidays. I ran play schemes when they were funded by the council. And it was during there I worked with people that were amazing at music. In the car, I'm the greatest singer in the world, performing on stage at Glastonbury. The reality is I'm a horrendous singer, but I got to work with people who really got my passion for music, and seeing how they work with the children on the play scheme, I then brought in about maybe doing a performance. And so within 2 weeks on one play scheme, we'd done Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which then ended up going on tour around. And that just came from an idea and people going, yeah, let's do it. And getting the children involved with making the costumes. So then that became, when I did play schemes the next time, I'd kind of set a precedent, and then it was expected we would do it. And again, just to get those children involved, and the feedback from the parents and the carers, for those, you know, those children that didn't ever talk and never wanted to stand up, were there beating a drum and being involved in the choir, or they were the prop person, because that was such an important job that they needed to get the props on in the right place. But then I took that, I saw what that did for the children. I then took talent shows into school. And so whichever school I was in, I'd introduced them. And I know quite a few of the schools where I've worked at, it's now a tradition, and every year they have a talent show because of what I started. And children that would never, ever stand forward because they weren't the sporty ones. And then all of a sudden you've got a child on stage with a drum kit, drumming, and they suddenly became the idol to everybody. You know, the person that was the best footballer in school then couldn't get enough of spending time with the person who'd been on stage with their guitar singing. just to see all that magic and what the arts could do, and running after school clubs and children gaining awards from that was just fantastic. The only frustration is schools then having funding cuts. And one of the heads I work with, very passionate about drama. I've never done school performances like it, with our own lighting rig and sound station and all of that. We were going to go on tour. We were going to go up to Edinburgh with some children and do some stuff for the Edinburgh Fringe, but there was no funding. So there's lots more to do. There's loads more that the arts could do, but while funding's an issue, schools can't. So it's about as much as we can do in schools, bringing it in. And when you've got somebody who's passionate, just let them go for it. Think out of the box.
Definitely. Now, you're also passionate about well-being. Obviously, that can be connected to the arts and, you know, encouraging children who would normally be quite quiet. But what sort of initiatives have you introduced linked to that in particular?
I worked quite well with the SLT at a school I worked, because I talked about, for me, mental health is so important, and I'd always be the person going around to check in on people or leaving post-it notes. It's just something I do. I want to make sure people are okay, and if not, what can I do to help? So people would come and talk to me, people would come and share, and I'd talk to the SLT about the importance of, we need to listen, you know, things are happening. And again, the SLT at the time, the head was very much into mental health being important and having time and what are we going to do. So I was appointed as the happiness ambassador.
Oh, that's such a lovely title.
So I was the happiness ambassador, and again, that might be doing little random acts of kindness. And so somebody might find there was a little something on their desk or a little post-it note, or we'd have special time during the day, we'd have special awards handed out. So that became a part of it. We had then, because we got the happiness ambassador and the staff were sharing, the staff were talking, the SLT were then becoming more aware of if people weren't 100%. Because again, we all put on our face, we all put on that
teacher face.
Fine, we're okay. So again, with the SLT, and again, it was great. They had we then split up into groups, and we'd have a check-in morning before the day once a week, where we'd just sit in our little groups, and you could have a laugh, a cry, a sing, a whinge, whatever you wanted to do, just to get it out. So you then weren't leaving it sat inside you, so you had a voice, and that was brilliant. And then rolling on from that, we had almost like a mini inspection in school, and fatally. The SLT said, if there's anything you want to share to all the staff, if there's anything you want to share that you think we do that they might not know about, tell them. So I presented to them all that we did about mental health and how important it was and the time we spent. And I wouldn't let it go. I wanted them to know all that we did and how much I valued being heard, and how, you know, we had this opportunity in this platform, that then it was decided that within the family of schools, actually, this was a really important thing, and it was rolled out across the family of schools, that we had, went from happiness ambassadors to wellbeing champions, and that there was always somebody in school. And then it looked at getting what are they, almost like contact numbers for crisis lines. If you were really struggling, who could you go to? So it went from a little idea to something that rolled out across multiple schools.
And with the art and the wellbeing, was that just when you were a permanent teacher, or have schools involved you as a supply teacher in anything?
Well, it's interesting, because it was predominantly when I've been permanent, but then I can't help when I go when I arrive in some schools, if there's a moment of, oh, now Vicky, we know you've got a background in drama with rehearsing a school play, not a problem, and I'll be there getting mucked in, joining. And I do go back. There's some schools I do quite a bit of supplying, so I do know the children really well. So I do get involved with their end of year performances, and I will be there as much as I can on the evenings, which I know I don't get paid for, but I know that I've been on that journey with those children, and their faces when you light up, because I'm there at the back and I'm singing away and I'm dancing and getting them going is great. And equally with the wellbeing, if I've built up relationships with quite a lot of schools in my years doing supply. And I do find that staff do talk and do approach me, and if I am concerned, I will go and speak to SLT if I'm really concerned about somebody. And again, that rolls out a little bit more, that then things get done, things get put into place. So even though I'm not a permanent member of staff, I've ended up bringing my arts and well-being package with me when I arrive.
I mean this in the nicest way, but you sound like the old school type of teacher that I used to work with, where everyone just like mucked in and it was that family thing. And then obviously academies came in and all that jazz, and everything changed, and that was the way everything was. Or you kind of remind me of like my old TA, like she just got stuck in with everything and she got so excited, and she always brought bits and bobs from home and all that kind of stuff, that initial enthusiasm that you had as a new teacher. And with supply, like for me personally, I saw schools that really valued their staff and really looked after them, and they did have lovely things going on. So if you are a new teacher watching this by any chance, check out the schools before you go and work.
Definitely.
Really need to check out the school, because there are brilliant ones out there.
There really are.
Yeah, definitely. So to round up then, it's been a brilliant chat. I've loved every minute, learned so much. I know you're full, but where are you online? How can people find you in case you are advertising anything over the summer or, you know, the coming months?
Oh, bless you. Well, to be honest, I have nothing advertised online at the moment. I have no capacity for anything else. And I tend to, if it would get to that, it would be on Facebook. I would be putting out posts locally, but at the minute I haven't got anything, because with my supply, with my tutoring, and then conducting weddings, I'm fully booked. So I'm not anywhere. So thank you.
What's your page so people can just at least say hello to you?
Says Victoria, so I'm Victoria Hatch. My official, as simple as that. It just says Victoria Hatch, and that is me. I haven't got anything fancy or anything, just because I've been so fortunate with word of mouth of where I am, and with my weddings. I'm just fully booked with all of that at the moment as well.
That's amazing. Just before we go then, I forgot to ask you about the wedding role. So on top of everything else that you do, what is your wedding role?
So I work for the council as a ceremony officer. So I'm the person that stands at the front and does the I do moments. Oh, it's amazing. And that's my well-being. Well, it was funny. I'd gone in a school that I did a lot of supply with. One of the teachers, permanent teachers, called me one day into a classroom and said, "I've seen how happy you are doing supply. I've just submitted my resignation and I'm going on supply because I want to be as happy as you." And we went out for dinner to celebrate. And while we were celebrating, she said, "Oh, and I've seen a job that I think you would really love, because I'm going to apply too. And it's being a ceremony officer." And I thought, oh, I have no idea. I'll have a go. And I applied, I interviewed, and then here I am 2 years later, absolutely loving it. I don't do it for the living. I don't do it as a living. I literally do it as my bit of well-being, my bit of going in. You are a part of somebody's day doing something really magical. So weekends, I do it on the weekends and during school holidays, because obviously on supply, that's one thing you don't get, is paid during the holidays.
No.
It's just a little way of earning a little bit of money. But yeah, I fit it in during the holiday. Oh, it's great. It's wonderful.
You are a triple threat, literally.
You don't realise until you start talking to somebody all that you do. But yeah, being my own boss, in charge of what I do and when I do, is definitely been the learning curve I needed. And it's definitely needed. The place where I am now, where I'm in charge of who I am and where I go, is something I never thought, and something that was alien to me, but now it's just great.
Oh, that's so lovely that there was a positive end to your story, and there will continue to be. And it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. It's been lovely.
Oh, thank you ever so much.
If you liked today's video, please make sure to like the video and also subscribe to see who else I'm chatting to.